Greetings, my fellow from Low Southern Thinkers and L3 Blues podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date is Wednesday, January 30th, 2019. So let's begin. Good day, my friends. Hopefully everyone's doing well. Thank you for tuning in. And it's a little bit mellow right now in the Himmershey district of Fort Lauderdale. I'm at Squiggy's New York style pizza located at 207 Himmershey Drive, or Southwest 2nd Street. Or is it street? Yeah, street. In the heart of downtown Fort Lauderdale, the Himmershey district to be exact. Pretty quiet right now. And just want to get a few things going here. Yeah, reading stuff about Florida Bulldog, talking about the place Roger Stone got raided at was actually rented. Pretty cool, I would say. And I love these sealed warrants. Very disturbing indeed, because there's a lot of folks got sealed warrants as well. Even one time the Baltimore Police Department did a sealed warrant on July 2nd, 2002. Raided this home of a gentleman named Lavo Wheeler. It was interesting about this fellow. Him and his wife at the time, I don't know if they're still alive, were members of this group, subversive controversial group called the National Alliance, which was run by the late Dr. William Pierce. And they had ordeals too with the sealed warrant when they just axed their homes down, which occurred on July 1st, 2002. Had a 72-year-old woman who was a great-grandmother handcuffed on her bed with the sealed warrant and took the stuff, computer stuff and all that, and they found gunpowder that's been improperly contained. Then they found him at his job. He was involved in distribution of plastic bottles, and got for 2 counts of improper containment of gunpowder. And the judge at the time gave him a bail of $2 million. So my jaw dropped back dead. And now this is talking to an individual that doesn't really agree with the solution to ideology, particularly of the late William Pierce National Alliance. However, when it comes to this, it's very similar to what happened to Roger Stone with those sealed warrants. Pretty disgusting and unacceptable as is. You got people who were climaxing, probably a bunch of them hired fools, were praising of his arrest. That's how pathetic some of these people are. They're the ones who say if you do it to them, they don't want to be screaming like a banshee in heat. Well, for all you can do about it, you know what? You won't do anything because you're one of those Uncle Toms and Angel Mamas to the system. So what happened was just an example of what happened to Roger Stone, happened to Lava Wheeler, and many other people. Doesn't matter if they're black or white. So it's not just one race issue. It's across the board. The same tyrannical plantation I've been talking about for years. Some people are learning, others don't care because they believe they have nothing to hide. They sell their rear end to the state. But when something happens to them, they don't want to be crying at most. That's why vigilance is essential, friends. And not going around being some doormat. Imagine the women out there. They find a guy. Hi, I'm a doormat to the system. I like to be stepped on by everyone for no apparent reason. I'm a yes person. Anything, even including my life. I'm a yes boy. You find me attractive? They'll be like, what the hell is this tramp doing? And that's how that's what happens when people don't want to exercise their obligations. We all have them. We all have lives, families, and all that. But it doesn't mean you sit there and do nothing or pray to God or Jehovah for trying to protect you because you've done nothing. Being proactive in multiple avenues is good. You don't have to go out there stressed out or try to make a name for yourself. That's not how things should be. You got a bunch of fashion models that claim to be activists are walking around thinking the world should revolve around them, and you know what? They blow, and they already been, I would say, bent, sold to the highest bidder. So, I'm going to be talking about those few areas pertaining to that. And I'm going to start off with H.R. 22, which was authored by Congresswoman Betty Joyce, District 3 from Ohio, a Democrat. As this law is entitled the Safer Act Now of 2019, which is H.R. 282. Let's see how safer this referendum is, right? And I'm just gonna go through it. And it actually, I love this mode objective here: to improve public safety through sensible reforms to firearms regulations. Let's see how sensible these reforms are. Mrs. Betty for herself, Miss Norton, Miss McCullum, and Mr. Hayes. The treasonous quacks started this co-sponsoring of this bill, the pipe dream that it is. And like it says here, be enacted by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States in Congress assembled. Section 1, short titled, the Act may be cited as the Safer America for Everyone Right Now Act, or the Safer Act. It has definitions from Section 921A, Title 18 U.S. Code is amended. By asserting, after paragraph 29, the following is paragraph 30. To 30 and 30 and 30. Let's go with 30. The term semi-automatic pistol means in a repeating pistol that A. utilizes portion of energy of firing cartridges to extract the fired cartridge case and chamber the next round, and B. requires a separate pull of the trigger for each trigger to fire each cartridge. The term semi-automatic pistol means any repeating gunshot that, this is 31 by the way, A. utilizes a portion of energy of firing cartridge to extract the firing cartridge case and the chamber the next round, and B. requires a separate pull of the trigger to fire each cartridge, and 2, subsection 2, by adding at the end following. That's what 36 has to say. The term semi-automatic weapons means any of the following, regardless of country or manufacturer or caliber of ammunition accepted. A semi-automatic rifle has a capacity to accept a detachable magazine at one of the following: a pistol grip, forward grip, a folding, telescoping, or detachable stock, grenade launcher or rocket launcher, a barrel shroud, and a threaded barrel. B, a semi-automatic weapon, rifle, has a fixed magazine with a capacity to more than 10 rounds accepted for an attached tubular device designed to accept and capable of operating only with 22 caliber rimfire ammunition. C, any part combination of parts, components, device, detachments, or accessory that is designed or function to accelerate the rate of fire of automatic, semi-automatic rifle, but not convert the semi-automatic rifle into a machine gun. That's what D has to say. A semi-automatic pistol has a capacity to accept the detachable magazine and only one of the following: a thread barrel, second pistol grip, a barrel shroud, the capacity to accept detachable magazine at some location outside of the pistol grip, or semi-automatic version of an automatic firearm. Wow. So, this is more real safe, right? Do you think this is a real safe one right now as I'm speaking? Alright, we'll continue on here. It says here, a semi-automatic pistol is E, a fixed magazine that has a capacity to accept more than 10 rounds. And S says, a semi-automatic shotgun that has any one of the following: folding, telescoping, detachable stock, a pistol grip, a fixed magazine with capacity to accept more than 5 rounds, the ability to accept a detachable magazine, a forward grip, a grenade launcher or rocket launcher, any shotgun with a revolving cylinder. That's G. H. All the following rifles, copies, the duplicates, variants, or altered facsimiles with the capability of any such weapon thereof. And it says right here about AKs. Do the whole list: AK, AK-47, AK-47S, AK-74, AKM, AKS, ARM, MAC-90, Miser, NMH-90, NMH-91, Rocket River Arms, LAR-47, SA-85, SA-93, Vector Arms, AK-47, Viper, RZR-10, and WUM. And the list goes on here for AKs. You can look it for yourself. Norco 56, 56S2, 84S, and 86S. Pilot Technologies, AK-47 and AKS. I'm just like browsing through here. I'm not going to go too bonkers. And they have a big list. AR types, of course, AR-10 and AR-15s. And of course, Alexander Arms Overreach Plus 16, Arm Model M15 22 long rifle carabine. And of course, Amulet M15T, Barrett RE7. I'm going to go right here, Bushmaster Carbon 15. I'm not going through every technical, every detail, but I'm just giving you a whole rundown. Alright, cool. So let's continue on here. Got the Bushmaster MOE series and their XM15, the chopper firearms, MF4 rifles. And of course the Diamondbacks, they want that. She wants the DSAs, ZM4 carabine, Remington R15 rifles. I'm going to post all this on my Spreaker page so you can really look at the details here. Yankee Hill Machine Gun Company, YHM15 rifles. Okay. Yeah, so they like get a whole stuff here. A lot of Berettas, of course. Springfield Armory SAR-48. And of course, a good amount on Thompson. All Thompson rifles. So they want that. They want that banned, okay? They want that controlled. Alright, just give you an example on the Numerex Uzi rifle, on the Uzi Mini Carabine, Uzi Model A Carabine, and Uzi Model B Carabine. Absolutely. And some Vector arms here as well. The Uzi type, the M62S. And all following pistols, copies, duplicates, variants, altered facsimiles with the capability of any such weapon, all AK-47 types. The Centurion 38 AK pistol, SZ Scorpion pistol, Darko AK-47 pistol, HCR AK-47 pistol, the IO Inc., which is Hell Pup AK-47 pistol, the Kirkenkopf pistol, Manny Draco AK-47 pistol. And that can go on here. You got one of the American Spirit AR-15, Bushmaster Carabine 15 pistol, the Chapa Firearm M4 pistol Gen 2. Olympic Arms AR-15 pistol. Of course, they got one here for the Rock River Arms LAR-15 pistols. Okay, of course, Calico Liberty pistols and the Encom MP9 and MP45. The Caltech PLR-16 pistol. And the following MAC types: MAC 10, MAC 11, and Mini and Masterpiece Firearms MPA A930 and 460, MPA Tactical Pistols, MPA Tactical Mini Tactical Pistol, Military Armament Corp, the M11, the Velocity Arm, the VMAC, the Sauer P566 pistol. Yeah, she thought this woman's on a witch hunt. I always say, of course, the Thompson TA510D and the TA5. All Uzi types, including micro Uzis. Interesting, you know, you got one from Drea, HNMC 1980 and SD12, Drunk Lethal Shotguns, Franchi Law 12 and Spaz 12. All Eisenmash Sega 12 types, including Sega 12, Sega 12S, the 12S XEP01, the 12K, the 12K-030, 12 Cash 040, Tatika, street sweeper, striker 12. This list goes on and on and on. And all belt-fed semi-automatic weapons including TNZ M2HB and FN M2495. So this gives you the whole rundown about the barrel shrouds and 22 carabiner rimfire ammunition. So they hate the 22 size bullets, I would say. I bet she hates 22s, huh? She likes water pistols. And it gives you all the definitions down here on this. Okay, and we're not more than 100. Yeah, it's all pretty insane. And of course, I like to see down here in 52, gun show vendor. The term gun show vendor means a person who is not licensed under Section 923 who exhibits, sells, offers for sales, transfers, or exchange a firearm at a gun show, regardless of whether not the person arranges with the gun show operator in a fixed location, which will exhibit, sell, offer for sale, transfer, or exchange firearms. And of course, like it says here, Section 3, prohibition of firearm dealers selling a firearm prior to the completion of a background check, which it says here 922 T1B of Title 18 USC is amended by striking or inserting and by striking clause. Restrictions of assault weapons. It's called defense weapons, but you don't use assault because it does fly around and attack you. In her eyes, it said the same thing on 922 of the Title 18 of the United States Code. One is amended by asserting after a subsection U the following, and of course V subsection 1, it shall be unlawful for a person to import, sell, manufacture, transfer, or possess or affecting interstate or foreign commerce a semi-automatic assault weapon. And she wants on paragraph 2. She wants subsection 2, paragraph 1 shall not apply to the possession, sale, transfer of semi-automatic assault weapon otherwise lawfully possessed under federal law on the date enactment under the Safer American for Everyone Right Now Act. And the paragraph shall not apply to firearms that is manually operated by bolt, pump, lever, or slide action, and B has rendered permanently inoperable or as an antique firearm defined as Section 921 of this title. So it's interesting here because it says here, the paragraph 1 should not apply to importations, transfers, to or possession by the United States. This is great. I'm going to read this right now. Okay, it shall not apply to importation for manufacture, for sale, to transfer or possession by the United States or department agency of the United States or state department agency or political subdivision of the state, or a sale or transfer or possession by qualified law enforcement officer employed by the United States or a department or an agency of the United States or a state department agency or political subdivision of the state for the purpose of law enforcement, whether on or off duty, or a sale or transfer or possession by a campus law enforcement officer for the purpose of law enforcement, whether on or off duty. So that right there is saying they're accepted, they're exempt. It's called a police state referendum, my friends. And it says here on B, the importation for sale under or transfer under license under the Title I of the Atomic Energy Act of 1954 for the purpose of establishing and maintaining on-site physical protection system and security organization required by federal law or possession by an employer or contractor, such licensee on such for such purposes or site for purpose of the licensee authorized training or transportation of nuclear materials. And like here, see the possession by an individual who is retired and good standing from the service with a law enforcement agency is not otherwise prohibited from receiving a firearm of a semi-automatic weapon, A, so the transfer to the individual by the agency upon such retirement, or that the individual purchase or otherwise obtained for official use before such a retirement. So there's some exceptions in here because they're special. And of course they have one here for the campus law enforcers. You can read that. And of course the general attorney shall, it's the sixth, establish, maintain in a timely manner a record, make, model, if available, date of manufacture of any semi-automatic weapon which the Attorney General is made aware that has been used in relation for a crime under state or federal law and the nature or circumstances of the crime involved, including outcome of relevant criminal investigations and proceedings. Attorney General shall annually submit a copy of the record established under this to Congress and make records available to the general public. So this is more, more crazier than what it is. So they're exempt. And you folks can read this, a little bit more. Of course, identification markings for large capacity ammunition feeding devices, all that good stuff. Seizure is one down here, which is D of the restrictions. Of a large of this. Okay, it says where are you? Seizure and forfeiture of large capacity ammunition feeding device. Section 924D of the title of U.S. Code is amended. Paragraph 1, by inserting a large capacity ammunition feeding after fire ammunition each time it appears. By inserting a large capacity feeding device after firearms or ammunition each time it appears. As B. As C, by striking or K and inserting K, R, V, or W. 2 in paragraph 3C, by inserting large capacity ammunition feeding devices after firearms or quantities of ammunition, and in paragraph 3E, by inserting 922 R, V, W, and after N. So, penalties, section 924A1B, title 18 is amended, striking or Q, section 922, inserting Q, R, W, V, W, or AA of section 922. Yeah, so this is one of those acidine bills, Background checks, transfer to grandfather semi-automatic assault weapons, repealing certain sections. Okay, it tells you all about that there. That's here T1 of what is it? Section 5. It says here, beginning the date that is the 90 days after the enactment of the Safer America for Everyone Right Now Act, it shall be unlawful for any person who is not licensed under this chapter to transfer a grandfather semi-automatic weapon to any other person who is not licensed under this chapter, unless a licensed importer, licensed manufacturer, or licensed dealer has first taken custody of the grandfather semi-automatic weapon for the purpose of complying with the section. Upon taking custody of the grandfather semi-automatic weapon, the licensee shall comply with all requirements of this chapter as if the licensee was transferring grandfathered semi-automatic assault weapon from the licensee inventory to the unlicensed transferee. So the whole thing is there is another anti right of privacy language on here, and so technically it is constitutionally it violates the 9th Amendment as well, and the 4th Amendment too, because it's not really the Fed's damn business. Okay, and all you folks out there should use Roe versus Wade, because the whole thing is it's a right of privacy, even though it's about abortion, but it's a right of privacy. So use Roe versus Wade on those parasites, including her. She'll hate it, but who the hell cares? You got to offend these clowns. And of course, it says here about paragraph 2.1 shall not apply to temporary transfer of possession for the purpose of participating in target shooting. All right, grandfather semi-automatic weapons, targets, and all that. So the whole thing is just a big sham. And I'm going to skip all this down here. And I like to use Section 108, notification of law enforcement agencies of prohibited purchase or attempted purchase of a grandfather semi-automatic weapon. It says here, A, in general, in the case of background check conducted by the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, pursuant to the request of a licensed importer, licensed manufacturer, or licensed dealer of firearms, as such terms are defined in Section 921 of the Title 18 USC, which background check determines that the receipt of a grandfather semi-automatic weapon as defined under Section 921A 49 Title 18 of the U.S. Code. A person would violate subsection G or N of 922 of the Title 18 the United States Code, the system, shall notify the law enforcement agencies described in subsection B, including the case and such determination made 14 business days after elapsed since the licensee contacted the system. So it tells you who's going to describe. Of course, the FBI is going to get involved, but you got to trust those people. Look, J. Edgar Hoover was a Nazi sympathizer, okay? So folks can look that up. And of course, the buyback program, used Burns Grant buyback programs. They want to use a buyback program on the Omnibus Crime Control Streets Act of 1968. Send it in, you'll get some bull BS coupon from some pathetic supermarket that will spread their butt cheeks to the state. Of course, background checks talks about that. Regulation of firearm transfer at gun shows. Persons attained at 21 years of age. And fingerprints. So they want to use that on here. Photographic fingerprints. Another right of privacy or incriminating. Like, I am convicted of purchasing a semi-automatic firearm. Give me a break. That's a Fifth Amendment issue too. Responsibility of gun owners. We talked about here. Shall be unlawful for a person to operate a gun show unless a person, A, not later than 30 days before the commencement of the gun show, notify the Attorney General in writing of the date, time, duration, and location of the gun show, identify with each person who will be a gun show at the vendor at the gun show. So they want you to be agents to the Attorney General. This is what this bimbo wants, and their lackeys. All right, and B, before commencement of the gun show, and it says here on one of the subsections, verify the identity of each individual who will be a gun show vendor or at a gun show by examining the valid identification document as defined in Section 1028D4 of the individual containing a photograph of the individual and requires such individual to sign a ledger and enter to the ledger identifying information concerning the individual and notice to set forth the obligation of the gun show vendor under this chapter. And notifies each person attend the gun show of the requirements of this chapter in accordance with such regulation that the Attorney General shall prescribe. Can we say federal overreach? Federalist Papers 46 warns us about this, where it was authored by James Madison. Feds know best. Federal law should never supersede state law. That's simple. And of course, they had here about background checks required before transfer of firearm between unlicensed persons. It shall be unlawful for a person who is not licensed under this chapter to transfer possession or the title of Firearm Act culturage a gun show to any another person who is licensed, who is not licensed to receive a possession or a title to on the cartilage of a gun show another person who is not licensed unless it's licensed importer, licensed manufacturer, gun dealer, has entered a separate bound record, model, make, and serial number of the firearm, and other such information in the transaction the Attorney General may require by regulation. It's like you want us to fill out more forms of 4473 on steroids, the 4473 Deluxe, right? And it says here, here's number 2, it says here, has notified the prospective transfer and prospective transferee of the firearm of the National Instant Background Check established under Section 103 of the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act has provided the licensee with the unique identification number that's indicating receipt of the firearm by the prospective transferee will not violate Section 922 of this title or state law. And they want bookkeeping requirements, of course. So yeah, it goes all like this pro-privacy and anti-privacy. Get all the books on you, get everything registered under your name, and you'll be in their database. Ain't that great? This is something that J. Edgar Hoover will be in heat over. Okay, that's one thing you gotta always look at, my friends. This is not all that pristine, and this is funny right here about the violations. Okay, it says here under increased penalties, and like it says here about 3A, except as provided in subparagraph E, any licensed dealer, licensed importer, licensed manufacturer, or licensed collector, not only making a false statement of representation with respect to the information required by this chapter to keep kept in records of a person's license on this chapter or violate Section 922M, shall be fined in this title in prison not more than a year or both. And it's talking about, the multiple offenses, it'll go 5 years or both, it'll go 10 years or both, increased penalties, criminal background check requirements, all that. It even talks about firearms trafficking, which is under Chapter 44 of Title 18 of the Code. And it's really, it's trafficking of firearms. Talked about that, interstate commerce. So get involved with more ATF, which is totally unconstitutional. Penalties in general. Any person who violates section shall be fined under this title in prison for not more than 20 years or both. How nice. Man, a lot of it is victimless crime laws when you look at this. So how does it supersede the right to keep and bear arms? It doesn't. And here's one thing you got to look at, Section 10, addition of dating partners and individuals subject to restraining orders. And as I'll say this in here, it's from 921A, Title 18 U.S. Code is amended. They want to striking paragraph 32 and inserting the following. 32, the term intimate partner means with respect to a person, the spouse of the person, a former spouse of the person, an individual who is a parent of a child of the person, an individual who cohabitates as a cohabitant with a person, and includes the dating partner, defined in Section 2266. And if it says here, right down here, any other person similarly situated to spouse is protected by domestic or family violence laws of the state or tribal jurisdiction in which the victim resides. And intimate partner, I give you a whole list here. In addition to stalking, I'll give you stuff on stalking. And so it's more like having been convicted of court and misdemeanor crime of stalking. So taking people's rights away, prohibition of certain firearm accessories, and it tells you, like right here, in 922, they'll add the following, except as provided in paragraph 2 after the date. Is 180 days of the enactment of this subsection shall unlawfully for any person import, sell, transfer, or possess when affecting interstate or foreign commerce a trigger crank, a bump fire device, or any part, combination of parts, components, device, attachment, or accessory that is designed or function to accelerate the rate of a fire or a semi-automatic rifle, but not to convert the semi-automatic rifle into a machine gun. So, it's funny because when you look at this, I like the severability here. Any provisions of this act and amended by this act on the application of such provision or amend to any person or circumstances held to be unconstitutional. That means it's considered illegal. Well, the remainder of this act, the amendment made by this act as the application of such provision or amendment where any person or circumstance shall not be affected thereby. I see a big thing about the Second, Fourth, Ninth Amendments to the U.S. Constitution and nullification. It could be a 10th Amendment issue as well. So they're going to try to achieve her goal is try to make sure these certain firearms are well restricted, registered, and all that. Well, sorry, Betty Joyce. With all due respect, you just have this attributes of Idi Amin Dada, which they did something similar to that in Uganda, but him as a successor, after they took care of his predecessor, he took advantage of everything. You are a slave mistress, and that's a fact. You like to see your brothers and sisters in the African American community be armless too, right? Do you believe the government should have all the authority, have more fire power than the people? You don't work for the people. You work for the state. That's what you're telling people. You serve them. You serve these agencies like Homeland Security, which they are very anti-firearms right. Not freedom-friendly at all. And you, dear, nothing more than a treasonous quack. Prove me wrong. I want everyone out there, including her, to prove me wrong. It has nothing to do with partisan politics, but Bill of Rights principle. Government keep out, but you don't believe in that. You believe government encroach, tread on the people, regardless of their race, color, and creed, gender, etc. This is why, my friends, the Safer Now Act is absolutely a monumental deception. So, you give me an intake on this, folks, and if you disagree, prove me wrong, and I'll be back. Cool. So the next one here is very intriguing, and got this today, and actually came out yesterday. From Consortium News pasted this on their site, and this is by Theodoros Furkry from Gaon Journal. Excuse me. It says here, Malcolm X warned about these Bourgeois hustlers. It's interesting because it says here Barack Obama was not an outlier, but the norm when it comes to the tokens of who paraded by Democrats to represent false progress and counterfeit diversity. And Kamala Harris is in the next line. Says Theodoros Furkry of the Gaon Journal. Growing up, of one of my biggest heroes and the person I wanted to emulate when I got older was Malcolm X. This was during my time of militancy and youthful rebellion, when I thought the only way to arrive at justice was through a revolution. This the insurgent within me was captivated by Malcolm X's take no prisoner approach and the way he spoke harsh truth to the status quo. It was not until I matured and I learned through hardship and indigence that I realized Malcolm X's power was not his fiery rhetoric, but his unifying message after returning from Mecca. And it's true, because I remember reading about this stuff on him, and it's that really had him see the bigger picture, in my view. So I will continue on here. However, as much as I've become an admirer of Ilhaj Malik el-Shabazz latter days, there are still aspects of his early reflections that ring true given the times we live in. What I'm referring to are not his blistering speeches where he could call white people devils, or his addresses where he echoed the teaching of Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm X himself walked away from that type of demagoguery. Rather, what intrigued me was the whole dissection of the political and social dynamics that kept black folks subjugated, suppressed, and it's wrong to any group, I can say. To this day, one of the most compelling arguments that Malcolm X made about the evils of both political parties is found in a speech he gave about political and economic state of black America. He brilliantly exposed the false distinction between Democrats and Republicans as a choice between the lesser of the same evil. The foxes and wolves are usually are the same breed. They belong to the same family. I think it's called canine. And the difference is that the wolf, when he shows you his teeth, you know that he's your enemy. And the fox, when he shows you his teeth, he appears to be smiling. But no matter which of them you go with, you end up in the doghouse, unquote. That was good. I like that a lot, okay? I'm going to continue on here. It took a mean mugging by reality, one that shook me out of the cognitive dissonance for me to realize that Democrats are no different than Republicans. They differ in their methods, but in the end they feast on us regardless of their gang affiliation. Both parties are subsidiaries of corporations and oligarchs. Our entire political system is based on two factions bamboozling their respective bases while manufacturing dissension on all sides. Gone when they get your vote. Now I've shed my political blinders. How I see how this game is played. I'll be honest here and admit that Democrats irritate me more than Republicans for this one simple reason. I've come to expect Republicans to be malicious. They're is honest in their advertisement. However, it's Democrats who smile like foxes. They pretend to be our allies, only stab us in our backs the minute.
Use anything. On the right hand side. It should be open.
It's the Democrats that smile like foxes. They pretend to be our allies, only to stab us in our backs the minute they get elected. Yeah, that's what I say. Don't believe the hype, right? They maintained power for decades by successfully treading on the pains and marginalized groups as they concurrently enact legislation and regulations that inflame the very injustices they rail against. If there is a group that has been leveraged the most by Democrats, it is the decadence of slaves and black diaspora as a whole. For generations, supposed liberals who call themselves progressives have cunningly used the pain of African Americans to further their own agenda. Mind control indeed, I would say, right? The Democrats' most loyal voting bloc have, time and time again, taken advantage of only to be tossed to the side as soon as Democrats gain power. They talk a good game and pretend to be for us right up until Election Day. As soon as the last ballot is counted, they are nowhere to be found. It is a front. On this front, another observation by Malcolm X into clear focus. One of the things really grabbed my attention while I was reading his autobiography is the way Malcolm described the dynamic and impoverished masses of the black bourgeoisies during the civil rights era. There are two types of, this is what he says, there's two types of Negroes in this country. The first, there are the bourgeois type who blinds themselves to the condition of his people, who is satisfied with token solutions. He's in a minority. He's a handful. He's usually the hand-picked Negro who benefits from token integration. But it is the mass of black people who really suffer from the burden of brutality and the conditions that exist in this country, unquote. What Malcolm X was describing was the class hierarchy within the construct of race. He rallied against the select few Negroes who willingly stepped on their own people in order to advance their own selfish ambitions. So Malcolm X was against integration for this reason. He realized that the modification of a racist system that benefits a fraction of society while keeping the majority repressed was morally bankrupt. This same realization eventually dawned on Martin Luther King Jr. when he confided to his closest advisors that he might have integrated his people into a burning house. It's called vigilance. You have to be vigilant in these areas. Fast forward 50 years, it's evident that the bourgeoisie Negroes, who Malcolm X talked about, have been unleashed by the establishment to work against the interests of their people. As the majority of African Americans suffered economic inequalities and are burdened by financial uncertainties, black politicians, pundits, and so-called activists are enriching themselves while they pretend to be fighting injustice. Exactly, it happens a lot. That's why I call these activists fashion models. They're a bunch of posers, all right? And I can't stand them with a passion. Forget Plymouth Rock, the biggest hoodwink of them all landed on us was a boulder named Barack. After losing the congressional primary to Bobby Rush in 2000, Obama's inner circle realized he was not embraced by African Americans in Chicago because many did not see him as one of them. He quickly adapted and learned the art of duplicity. Obama perfected his ability to talk eloquently about our issues and suffering as a means to an end. The end was his unabated ego. After he scaled the heights of politics, he ended up enacting policies that accelerated the wealth gap. For his brazen act of betrayal, Obama was rewarded handsomely. And I remember there's an article about him called Barack Obama is a Hamiltonianist. And I think I showed that a long time ago. You must have looked through the archives in my library. It's amazing. The audacity of trope. Barack Obama was not an outlier, but the norm when it comes to the tokens who parade by Democrats to represent the false progress and counterfeit diversity. Kamala Harris is the next black bourgeoisie in line who is hoping to use the plight of African Americans and the tribulations of black folk to win the White House. After spending a career locking up brown and black folks with the impunity of resurrecting the ugly legacy of panel slavery, she is now shamelessly pretending to be the next coming Sojourner Truth. Hers is the audacity of trope. Given the fact there are too many are conditioned to think in binary fashion, I must take a pause here to clarify one thing. There's no way to excuse this pernicious nature of Republicans and the vile racism of Donald Trump. That's just his view right now, but I'll just continue on here. After all, not only are Republicans insidious when it comes to the way they treat African Americans and minorities as a whole, the party Trump uses the same playbook of being concerned to dupe their respective side. Well, some people in that group may disagree with them. So, however, the more I observe the rank of opportunism of the Democrat forerunners, the more I appreciate the sagacity of Malcolm X. It's not only politicians like Barack Obama and Kamala Harris who traffic in the most insincere form of paternalism, but there is a whole cottage industry of black opinion leaders and gatekeepers who actively work against our interests while passively speaking against injustice. They bound on TV and the press and throughout social media. The surest way to make a name for oneself is to be part of the woke intelligentsia to lure their people into collective comas. It's like a form of her conformity, and you can say this too. This straight out of the book Propaganda by Edward Bernays. And that, folks, it doesn't matter. I remember everyone should read it. When you read it and comprehend, you just won half the battle. I'll pursue here. Adding insult to injury is the fact that the same beguilers, these mouthpieces, are not only using the pains of their oppressed to advance themselves, they are now employing the injuries of the masses to deflect well-deserved criticism. The identity has been weaponized instead of addressing the structural nature of racism and sexism. Folks like Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, and identity politics shysters across the political spectrum are turning the victims of systematic oppression into human shields to intimidate anyone who dares to question their record. Enough is enough. Thank you. The talented 10th. There is a broader problem that's beyond the two-faced grifters. The truth is that the black community has become bifurcated. The Burgosi's class feeling the blessings of capitalism and enterprise, while the vast majority are burdened by consumerism and debt. Du Bois once talked about the talented 10th and educated sectors of blacks leading the bottom 90% out of bondage. Sadly, the talented 10th has been convinced to seek self-enrichment and forget about collective wellness. That's why I've always been admire individuals like Dr. Walter Williams, because he's a very articulate individual and looks at things on a self-governing view perspective. So it says here, what is true of African Americans, the true society as a whole. In this richest nation, there exists breathtaking chasms between the few who have much and many who have little. Keeping this dynamic in place is a pyramid scheme that transfers wealth upward by the greedy politicians and the difference of the proletariat. We are being swindled by hustlers to keep this most depraved system intact. And he's right on that. And technically, that's why I always believe that government's a parasite society. I don't expect leaders to be perfect. Very few are guilt-free when it comes to the iniquities of the status quo. We all have our battles as we vacillate between our better angels and the lure of our desires. All we can do in life is seek to do better. After all, Malcolm X's very narrative is one of mistakes followed by atonement. My aim is not to be pious nor pretend purity from people. I have way too many planks in my eyes to demand others act blameless. However, there's a vast difference between those who perpetuate infringements by commission versus the rest of us who transgress through omission. I would be the first person to applaud Harris, Obama, Trump, or any politician who sincerely admit their mistakes and try to make amends. Far from doing so, these con artists pretend to do the right thing as they pour fuel on the fire. There's a reason why hypocrisy is one of the most egregious sins. It's hard to be forgiven when the offender is lying about his penance. Malcolm X is painted by many in the mainstream media as an academia as a firebrand who preached from the pulpit of exclusion. but those who know his history understand very well that who he was when his journey concluded was vastly different than the caricature of Malcolm X as presented by his institution of power he spoke against. It never fails: first kill the messengers and co-opt their message. The truth that he changed his approach, disavowed divisive rhetoric, and embraced inclusive justice. These words were uttered by Malcolm X as he spoke against the system of inequality that shackles billions around our planet into lives of servitude and bondage. His decision to pivot from friction and instead to seek light of universal justice is the reason why he was silenced. And I have to agree, the status quo rewards charlatans, but has a way of killing off unifying voices. On this front, the status quo has succeeded beyond his wildest imagination. We're now being led by a procession of overseers who pretend to be Moses. This hustle will not work much longer, however. More and more people are waking up into their deception and refusing to be doormats of Democrats, Republicans, or anyone else. If we are to find redemption, it will be not from the top, nor will the revolution be televised. As I noted later, I came a long way from my days of would-be revolutionary. Malcolm X had an eye-awakening moment in Mecca, seeing a broader sea humanity praying in unison. I had my Mecca moment, by the way, of shelters and homeless missions and observing diverse dissection of Americans made invisible by the mouths of the gentry and the indifference of society. It's for this reason that I disavow sectional movements and pray for a day where all of us unite beyond our trivial differences. We have more that unites us than the issues that divide us. When we realize this is the day we will get the change we all have been waiting for. The revolution matter is not one of the gun, but the one of the hearts. I gotta say, this man is right, and I give him kudos for this article because it's very powerful. And even like I said, you gotta read people's works. And even with Malcolm X, the man made his mistakes. He had his rough edges. However, he took the time to see things broader. He's seen the corruption with his own organization when he was in the Nation of Islam. But he took the initiative to go to Mecca for Ramadan and wrote to his followers at the Mosque of Islam in New York, telling them there are people whiter than a white man, blonde hair, blue eyes, sharing the same food, sleeping in the same tent, and praying the same God in unison. That's what opened up his eyes, and the Nation of Islam found him a serious threat. If he would have spoke, they would have been out of business for a long time ago. And this is why unification is awesome. We're always going to have disagreements, but we have a common interest, we can build from there. Study facts, information, have that knowledge. You don't have to be a millionaire or an opportunist, be on TV to get your name across. You can start going around and chat with people in your own community. That's a great start. And even on the internet, always beware of those trolls, of course. That's what they don't want. They want us fighting amongst each other. That's why you see this garbage media. You know, people should just throw their TVs out the damn. Get their TVs, take it to a gun range, shoot at it, and you feel better. Something I agree with Clayton Douglas from Free American on that one. They'll always go a lot further than what they say the states say you can't do. They're nothing more than pissants. Tyranny as a whole. We're all in the same tyrannical plantation, my friend. This is happening worldwide. We can all break this mold of their mind-controlled, manipulative feces and flush it down the toilet. Alright. I'm going to do one more here. I'll be right back. Alright, folks, we're going to do one more here. I know it's taking a little bit long, but forgive me on that. And this one actually came from a Rutherford Institute. and it came out yesterday. It's this commentary by John Whitehead, which I am a supporting member of his organization. I recommend everyone should check him out, because you see a lot of nonsense, but at least they go on constitutional principle. It's entitled Jackboots in the Morning, No Despair from This American Nightmare. Number one quote here. This is Jackboots in the Morning. This is the American Nightmare that they would arrest somebody like this, Judge Andrew Napolitano. The American police state does not discriminate. Whenever dangerous practices allow the government to carry you out now, whether it's in the name of national security or protecting America's borders or making America great again, rest assured these same practices can and will be used against you when the government decides to set its sights on you. We've been having the same debate about the perils of government overreach for the past 50 plus years, and still we don't seem to learn, or if we learn too late. For too long now, American people have allowed their personal prejudices in politics to cloud their judgment and render them incapable of seeing that the treatment being doled out by government lethal enforcers has remained consistent no matter the threat. Absolutely, we can go at least to like David Koresh, we call it the Waco massacres. Oh, they're just nut jobs. That's okay for them to kill the women and children. Oh, hell to the ATF. That's just an example. All excessive, abusive tactics employed by the government today, warrantless surveillance, stopping for searches, SWAT team raids, roadside strip searches, asset forfeiture schemes, private prisons, indefinite detention, militarized police, etc., will eventually be meted out on the general populace. We can all hold hands and sing God Bless the Patriot Act, right? At that point, you will find yourself in the government's crosshairs. It doesn't matter. Whatever your skin is, black or yellow or brown or white. It will not matter whether you're an immigrant or a citizen. It will not matter if you're rich or poor. It will not matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. And it certainly won't matter who you voted for in the last presidential election. At the point you find yourself subjected to dehumanizing, demoralizing, thuggish behavior by government bureaucrats who are hyped up on the power of their badges and the power to detain, search, integrate, threaten, and generally harass anyone they see fit. Remember, you were warned. Take Roger Stone, one of Trump's longtime supporters, for example. This guy is accused of witness tampering, obstruction of justice, and lying to Congress. But if Congress lies to you, that's exceptional. As far as we know, this guy is not the kingpin of a violent mob or a drug laundering scheme. He's been charged with a political crime. So what does the FBI do? They send 29 heavily armed agents in vehicles that carry out a SWAT-style raid on Stone's Florida home just before dawn on January 25th, 2019. As the Boston Herald reports, after his arraignment on witness tampering, obstruction, and lying to Congress, a roused Stone was quoted as saying 29 agents pounded on the door, pointed automatic weapons at him, and terrorized his wife and dogs. Stone was taken away in handcuffs, and the sixth associate of President Trump to be indicted in the special counsel Robert Mueller probing Russian meddling in the 2016 election. All of the charges have been related to either lying or tax evasion, with no evidence of so-called collision with Russia emerging to date. And there's people out there still buy the story because they hate Donald Trump so much. Overkill, sure. Yet another example, government overreach and brutality, definitely. And this is what I gotta say. What has Sheriff Gregory Tony from Broward County been notified about this raid? Some people, I think so. We don't know for sure. I haven't got my memo yet from you, Sheriff Tony, so please send me your reply as soon as possible. Plus, I do understand you have a lot on your plate. All right, I will proceed. But here's the thing. Well, Tucker Carlson and Chris Christie and other Trump apologists appeared shocked that law enforcement personnel would stage a military assault against an unarmed 66-year-old man who had been charged with a nonviolent crime. This is nothing new. Indeed, this is blowback, one more vivid example of how government short-sighted use of immoral, illegal, and unconstitutional tactics becomes dangerous weapons turned against the American people. To be clear, this stone raid is far from the first time a SWAT team has been employed in non-violent scenarios. Nationwide SWAT teams routinely invade homes, break down doors, kill family pets. They always shoot the dogs first, damage furnishing, terrorize his family, and wound or kill those unlucky enough to be present during the raid. Peyton, a 7-year-old black Labrador retriever, and 4-year-old Chase, that also a black lab, were shot and killed after a SWAT team mistakenly raided the mayor's home while searching for drugs. Police shot Peyton 4 times. Chase was shot twice. Once was behind as he ran away. My government blew through my doors and killed my dogs. They thought we were drug dealers and we were treated as such. I don't think they really ever considered we weren't. Recalls Mayor Chai Cavo, who described being handcuffed and interrogated for hours wearing only underwear and socks, surrounded by dogs' carcasses and pools of the dog's blood. SWAT teams have been employed to address an astonishingly trivial array of so-called criminal activity or mere community nuisances, angry dogs, domestic disputes, improper paperwork filed by an orchard farmer, and a misdemeanor marijuana possession, to give a brief sampling. In some instances, SWAT teams are even employed in full armament to perform routine patrols. If these raids are becoming increasingly common and widespread, you can chalk it up to make work philosophy, which you can assign at times unnecessary jobs to individuals that keep them busy or employed in this case. However, the make work principle is being used to justify the use of sophisticated military equipment and in the process of qualifying for federal funding. SWAT teams originate as specialized units dedicated to defusing extremely sensitive, dangerous situations. They were never meant to be used for routine police work such as serving a warrant. It's interesting about that, because I remember that, I'll continue on here. Frequently justified as a vital tool necessary to combat terrorism and deal with rare but extremely dangerous criminal situations, such as those involving hostages. SWAT teams, which first appeared on the scene in California in the 1960s, have now become an intrinsic parts of federal and local law enforcement operations, thanks in large part to the substantial federal assistance and the Pentagon's 1033 military surplus recycling program, which allows the transfer of military equipment, weapons, and training to the local police for free at sharp discounts. And you can say this: the SWAT team in Los Angeles was spearheaded by Police Chief Daryl Gates. Do you remember the Rodney King ordeal? He was police chief at the time and then resigned. But see, to be very frank, it goes a lot deeper than that. Daryl Gates had a police state fetish. And the people in Los Angeles went belly up, okay, especially with the TV show SWAT that was on ABC in the 70s. All the great things they do. But we'll continue on here. Mind you, it's the same program that President Trump breathed new life into back into 2017. Remember, he's a pro-law enforcement candidate, just like Richard Nixon. As the role of paramilitary forces has expanded to include involvement in nondescript police who work targeting nonviolent suspects, the mere presence of SWAT units has actually injected a level of danger and violence into police-citizen interactions that was not present as long as these interactions were handled by traditional civilian officers. There are few communities without a SWAT team today. In 1980, there were roughly 3,000 team-style raids in the U.S. Incredibly, the number has since grown to more than 80,000 SWAT team raids per year. Where this becomes a problem of life and death for Americans is when these militarized SWAT teams are assigned to carry out a routine law enforcement task, no longer reserved exclusively for deadly situations. SWAT teams are now increasingly being deployed for relatively routine police matters, such as serving a search warrant with some SWAT teams being sent out as much as 5 times a day. In the state of Maryland alone, 92% of 8,200 SWAT missions were used to execute search or arrest warrants. Police in both Baltimore and Dallas have used SWAT teams to bust up poker games. A Connecticut SWAT team swarmed a bar suspected for serving alcohol to underage individuals. Excuse me. In Arizona, a SWAT team was used to break up an alleged cockfighting ring. And in Atlanta, SWAT team raided a music studio allegedly out of concern that it might have been involved in illegal music piracy. And Minnesota SWAT team raided the wrong house in the middle of the night, handcuffed the 3 young children, held the mother on the floor at gunpoint, shot the family dog, and then forced the handcuffed children to sit next to the carcass of their dead pet and bloody pet for more than an hour while they searched the home. Hooray! God bless the police state. Adolf Hitler would be proud, exactly, and J. Edgar Hoover as well. A California SWAT team drove an armored Lecano Bearcat into Roger Serrato's yard, surrounded his home with paramilitary troops wearing face masks, then threw a fire-starting flashbang grenade into the house in order. Then when Serrato appeared at the window, unarmed and wearing only shorts, held him at bay with rifles. Serrato died of asphyxiation from being trapped into the flame-filled house. Incredibly, the father of 4 had done nothing wrong. The police team has misidentified him as someone involved in the shooting. Ain't that great? Kinda, sort of, it's the only way. But remember, they have the badge. They are exceptional. We should kiss the floor they walk on. And don't get me wrong, friends. I am not anti-police or anything like that. When it comes to tyranny like this, I am not afraid to call these sons of bitches out. So, I'll continue on here. And then there was a police officer who tripped, accidentally shot and killed Erie Stamps, an unarmed grandfather of 12 who had been forced to lie face down on the floor of his home at gunpoint while a SWAT team attempted to execute a search warrant against his stepson. And equally outrageous was a 4-hour SWAT team raid on a California high school where students were locked down in the classrooms, forced to urinate in overturned desks, generally terrorized by heavily armed masked men searching for possible weapons that were never found. These incidents are just the tip of the iceberg. What we are witnessing is an inversion of the police-civilian relationship. Rather than compelling police officers to remain within the constitutional bounds of service of the people, ordinary Americans are being placed at the mercy of militarized police units. This is what happens when paramilitary forces are used to conduct ordinary policing operations, such as executing warrants on nonviolent defendants. Unfortunately, general incompetence, collateral damage, fatalities, property damage, etc., and botched raids tend to go in hand with an overuse of paramilitary forces. In some cases, officers misread the address on the warrant. In others, they are simply barged into the wrong house or even the wrong building. In another subset of cases, such as Department of Education raid on Anthony Wright's home, police conducted a search of a building where the subject no longer resides. If you're wondering why the Department of Education needs a SWAT team, you're not alone. Among those federal agencies laying claim to their own law enforcement divisions are the State Department, Department of Education, Department of Energy, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the National Park Service, just to name a few. In fact, it says something about our reliance on the military that federal agencies have nothing whatsoever to do with national events now see the need for their own paramilitary units. If we have a militia, they'll call us terrorists, right? SWAT teams have even on occasion conducted multiple sequential raids on wrong addresses or executed search warrants despite the fact that the suspect is already in police custody. Police have also raided homes on the basis of mistaking the presence on the scent of legal substances for drugs. Incredibly, these substances have included tomatoes, sunflowers, fish, elderberry bushes, kidnap plants, hibiscus, and ragweed. As you can see, all too often, botched SWAT team raids have resulted in one tragedy after another for the residents with little consequences for law enforcement. Unfortunately, judges tend to afford extreme levels of differences to police officers who have mistakenly killed innocent civilians, but do not afford similar leniency to civilians who have injured police officers in act of self-defense. Exactly, because they think they're special, okay? So effing special. Even homeowners who mistake officers for robbers can be sentenced for assault and murder if they take defensive actions and resulting in harm to police. You don't come to my damn house, plain and simple. If I come into your house and you're making love to your wife or girlfriend, will you like that? No, I got a warrant. And as journalist Rady Balco shows in his depth study of police militarization, the shock and awe tactics utilized by many SWAT teams only increases the likelihood that someone will get hurt. Drug warrants, for instance, are typically served by paramilitary units late at night or shortly before, unfortunately, to the unsuspecting homeowner, especially in cases involving mistaken identities or wrong addresses. A raid can appear to be nothing less than a violent home invasion, with armed intruders crashing through their door. The natural reaction would be to engage in self-defense. Yet, such a defensive action on part of the owner picking a gun owner will spur officers to employ lethal force. Look at that! You don't just come in there like a bunch of yahoos. That's exactly what happened to Jose Garena, the young ex-Marine who was killed after a SWAT team kicked the door of his Arizona home during a drug raid and opened fire. According to news reports, Garena, 26 years old and a father of 2 young children, grabbed a gun in response to forced invasion, but never fired. In fact, the safety was still on his gun when he was killed. Police officers were not as restrained. The young Iraqi warrior veteran was allegedly fired upon 71 times. Garena had no prior criminal record, and the police found nothing illegal in his home. Ayanna Jones is dead because of SWAT raids gone air Ari. The 7-year-old was killed after a Detroit SWAT team searching for a suspect launched a flashbang grenade into her family's apartment, broke through the door, and opened fire, hitting a little girl who was asleep on the living room couch. Cops weren't even in the right apartment. Exhibiting a similar lack of basic concern for public safety, a Georgia SWAT team launched a flashbang grenade into the house in which baby Bobo and his 3 sisters and his parents were staying. The grenade landed in the 2-year-old's crib, burning a hole in his chest and leaving him scarring that a lifetime of surgeries will not be able to easily undo. Alberto Sepulveda, 11, died from one accidental shotgun round to the back after the SWAT team raided his parents' home. The problems inherited in these situations are further compounded by the fact that the SWAT teams are granted no-knock warrants at high rates, that such warrants themselves are rendered particularly meaningless. Fourth Amendment violation, but they're okay, they're special. The sorry state of affairs is made even worse by U.S. Supreme Court rulings that have essentially done away with the need for no-knock warrant altogether, giving police authority to disregard protections afforded by foreign American citizens by the Fourth Amendment. That's what you call nullification. You give the Supreme Court a big middle finger. Plain and simple. Nullify, nullify, nullify. In the process, Americans are rendered altogether helpless and terrorist-stricken as a result of these confrontations with the police. Indeed, terrorizing is a midterm to describe the effect of those who survived such vigilante tactics. It was terrible. It was the most violent experience of my life. I thought it was a terrorist attack, said 84-year-old Leona Goldberg, a victim of such a raid. Yet this type of terrorizing activity is characteristic of the culture that we have created. If ever were a time to demilitarize and de-weaponize local police forces, it's now. That includes the city of Fort Lauderdale. Just an example. And beyond. While we are now grappling with the power-hungry police state at the federal level, the militarization of domestic American law enforcement is largely the result of militarization of local police forces, which are increasingly militaristic in their uniforms, weaponry, language, training, and tactics have come to rely on. SWAT teams in matters that once could have been satisfactorily performed by traditional civilian officers. Yet American police forces were never supposed to be a branch of a military, nor they were meant to be private security forces for the reigning political faction. Instead, they were intended to be the aggregation of countless local police units composed of citizens like you and me that exist for a sole purpose to serve and protect the citizens of each and every American community. As a result of increasing militarization of the police in recent years. However, the police now not only look like military with their foreboding uniforms and phalanx of lethal weapons, but they function like them as well. Mind control at its finest. Thus, no more do we have a civilian force of peace officers entrusted while serving and protecting the American people. Instead, today's militarized law enforcement officials have shifted the allegiance from the citizenry to the state, acting preemptively to the ward of any possible changes to the government's powers, unrestrained by the boundaries of the Fourth Amendment. Yeah, Homeland Security. Yeah, they're not all good people, okay? As journalist Herman Schwartz observed, the Fourth Amendment was designed to stand between us and arbitrary government authority. For all practical purposes, that shield has been shattered, leaving our liberty and personal integrity subject to the whim of every cop on the beat, trooper on the highway, and jail official. Heavily armed police forces and the end product of the government, federal, local, and state, and law enforcement agencies have merged, have become a standing or permanent composed of full-time professional soldiers who do not disband. Yet, these permanent armies are those who drafted the U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights, fear as tools used by despotic governments to wage war against the citizen. All hail to the war on terror, right? This phenomenon we are experiencing with the police is what philosopher Abraham Kaplan referred to us as the law of the instrument, which essentially says that to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. In the scenario that has been playing out in recent years, we, the citizenry, have become the nails to the hammer by the government henchmen, a.k.a. its gun for hire, a.k.a. its standing army, a.k.a. nation's law enforcement agencies. Like I said, Homeland Security. Remember that movie, Escape from New York? John Carpenter did. I think, it came out in 1982, 81 or 82. Kurt Russell, John Carpenter directed. The U.S. Police Force. Now you got Homeland Security, right? Look at that. The problem, as one reporter rightly conclude, is not that life has gotten much more dangerous, is that authority have chosen to respond to even innocent situations as they were in the war zone. A study by political scientists at Princeton University concludes that military police and SWAT teams provide no detectable benefits in terms of officer safety or violent crime reduction. This study, the first systematic analysis on the use and consequences of militarized force, reveals that police militarization neither reduces rate of violent crime nor changes the number of officers assaulted or killed. In other words, warrior cops aren't making us or themselves any safer. Indeed, as I document in my book, Battlefield America, The War on the American People, it is increasingly evident that militarized police armed with weapons of war who are empowered to carry out pre-dawn raids on our homes, shoot our pets, and terrorize our families have not made America safer or freer. The sticking point is not whether America must see eye to eye on the pressing issues of the day, but whether we can agree that no one should be treated in such a fashion by their own government. And Mr. Whitehead is right. And this, you always got to look at these areas in the bigger picture. So, only thing I can say, folks, start on the local level. There are towns right now are doing resolutions and items demilitarizing their police, and that's fantastic. We got to start from the ground up, not the top down. And we can, anything they want to use surplus and to fund our police and military bases, we can give the big middle finger. It's called the 10th Amendment. Nullification is one great remedy. So don't be afraid of this fear. Action speaks louder than words. If you're going to build there's nothing you can do, you won't do anything. You're just telling people, I'm a number to the tyrannical state. One great pretentious demonade, or other words, word for it is a whore. And that is it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share this throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or something that's interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondence to Decorum. I'll be going to all my on my social media sites and email addresses on my Spreaker page. Okay, so check it out. And hit me on Patreon too. If you want to donate money, patreon.com/Loki Luck Roman numeral 3. That will be on there as well, okay? Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love. And may your guardian spirits be with you.